Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you so much for tuning to another episode of the Financial Griot, aka TFG. I am one of the co-hosts of three, Alanta Elson. Here at the Financial Griot, we love to just discuss stories, share our stories, and bring on guests that have great, valuable information within their stories. Today is cool because I'm not by myself. No, I'm not by myself. This is a live, podcast because we are having a great conversation. We have Lawrence here. I know he's gonna introduce some level of masculinity toxic. It's all good.
Yeah,
Lawrence, I'm waiting.
First of all, you said stories like 3 times in one sentence. I'm like,
you know what? Because it's nothing when people looking at you. I'm like, don't look at me.
The story, and then we're gonna get more stories for the story.
Oh my God, it's a storybook. TFG is a storybook.
Because is that the only word she knows? Story.
Yeah, that's the only word I know. This is what it is.
Well, welcome everybody. That if you're listening to us for the first time, we do talk about personal finances, budgeting, and ultimately ways that you can progress yourself throughout your career. And my name is Lawrence Delva Gonzalez. I'm also known as the neighborhood finance guys of the interwebs, where I could kind of spit hot fire. So you're gonna like some of my posts, but I'm pretty sure at some point you're gonna hate one of my posts because it's really about challenging you to grow, and that challenge is never easy. It's never something fun. It's something that we all have to do. So with that being said, we're here and happily awaiting our special guest, Holly Noon, who's out here. I guess her name is Noon. Is it your real name, Noon?
It's Noon.
At Noon, kids would really make fun of you. That's what I've done.
No, I used to always tell her, like, your name is just like, it flows with everything. I'm like, why I have a simple last name? It flows with everything.
Yeah, and it's short too. Now my last name is long as heck. It's a whole like.
And then you hyphenated your name now, like Delva Gonzalez.
This got to be like a good 12, 15 words or something. It's crazy.
Did you change your social security card and everything since you changed your name?
Well, my wife did.
Your passport?
Obviously, like as a guy would take our time, but one thing my wife said, I already did that. I'm like, oh shoot, it's already happened. So everything else is changed, like my job stuff, but I do need to go change my driver's license as well as my passport.
So you did the easy things first.
Well, she did it for me, yes. So obviously, but my name has changed officially, so it is Delva Gonzalez.
No, it's cool. It flows. I love it.
Yeah, and I get less shade for my last name being Gonzalez. They were like, "Oh, you don't look Hispanic." I'm like, that was racist, but okay. Like, pass it on.
Delva Gonzalez still sound Hispanic.
Yeah, it does, but it kind of breaks it apart. So it's not just Hispanic. So you're like, oh, okay, I get it. He's married to, or he got into, like his grandmother or something, that kind of stuff.
Right. But nonetheless, we're going to jump into it because, like Lawrence mentioned, we do have a special guest today. My best friend, close friend over 15 plus years now, Miss Holly Noon. She has an incredible story, just her career and how it just, evolved into now being a VP. And I'm just super proud of her. And this is long overdue. Once again, when you talk to your friends every day, it's something that you'll kind of come into, like, hey, come on the podcast, but it just never seemed to happen. But this is a great time because I'm looking forward to everyone listening to her stories. So let's get into it. How are you, Miss Noon?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. Finally.
No, my bad. My fault.
Finally. But I'm happy to be here and share my story as I've navigated my career. I had to do the math for the last 4 years and getting my salary increases, which total like $66,500 in 4 years. So I'm going to share this as a single mom because I think that's always, I have a lot of followers in my sphere who always, like, when I share my story, are always like, oh, it's so admirable that you've come so far. And, I give them hope and inspiration to, like, have the bravery to move to a whole new place and start over with your kids and just making pivots in your career and showing your value, that you don't have to kind of stay where you are to go somewhere else where someone sees your value and pays you what you feel that you're worth. So I hope in telling my story that people can resonate and pull some, gems out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that that's always been a case of just people are very, I'll say, reluctant, especially when you have children, of making those sort of pivots and moves because you want to have that sustainability for your child or children. And in your case, well, I want you to share the story how it started off because you graduated from UCF, but yeah, just explain how that kind of like career that path that you've chosen.
Right. So I've had a very interesting career path. So it started out in insurance / underwriting, so like risk management. And so as I took that journey, I was like, okay, getting recognized, put in these like manager development programs. And while I was working full time, I was going to school. So my first master's degree was fun, but it didn't really produce a lot of value, like income wise, because it was in criminal justice. And at that point, when I was leaving the program, I was starting to interview with the FBI. But when they were like only trying to pay $50,000 to live in DC, I was like, that's not going to work for me. So I was like, I got to figure this out. So I ended up working at Travelers Insurance Company under the big red umbrella. And while I was there, they were like, oh, you're doing so well. And we really want to see you in management. But I was like only making, I think like $48,000. And I'm like, I'm about to have another baby. This is not going to work. And I had a partner at the time and he was making like 90. So it wasn't like there was like struggling financially. But I think as a woman, I'm sitting here with a bachelor's and a master's degree. Oh, and my associates. Like for all you have associates, I'm going to claim my associate's degree too. And only making 48,000. I was like, I have to find a way to make more money. And so here I am with a 2.5-year-old and a newborn. And I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, how can I make more money? So on the side, because I was a licensed claims adjuster, I started picking up side jobs being when catastrophes would happen, like hurricanes, I would go and adjust claims to supplement my income. But because that's very seasonal, like if you ain't having hurricanes and people's properties ain't getting destroyed, that's not consistent. So I was like, all right, back to the drawing board. So later in 2017, I went through a breakup. So I have a 7-month-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm living at home with my mom, trying to figure out, just moving back to Jacksonville, what am I going to do for income? Because I quit my job when I left Orlando. So I have no money coming in. And finally, I was like, okay. So I reworked my resume. And I said, okay, I have all these skills. What do I really want to do in my life that will give me the money that I want? And so at that point, this was going into 2018, I was like, I want to aim to make 75,000 at some job. So I got a master's degree. I have all this work experience. How can I put this in a resume to sell myself to aim for a job that paid 75,000? And why I came with the 75,000 was like, I did my budget. I'm like, okay, I got 2 kids. I got to pay for daycare. Child support wasn't set in stone just yet. So I had to figure out if I'm going to live by myself, support all these things. What does that number need to be to still be able to save and move how I want to move? And in Jacksonville at that time, it was a lot more. You could go very far off $75,000 and live really good. But I just started working my resume. And from that reworking my resume, I started doing resumes on the side for people too, because I had such great response. So when I reworked my resume, I had about like in a week, 20 inquiries, 7 or 8 of those being like interviews, like initial interviews. And then to the point where I was down to like, I literally was entertaining 5 job offers. And they range anywhere from 60 to potentially 78. And a couple of those I didn't get because I was beat out by someone who had more experience. So, and that was the feedback. They're like, we love you, but you don't have enough. You're getting beat out by someone who has 15 years experience to your 8. And so I can't be mad at that. So also what I'll say is in this pivot, it wasn't just about money, it's also about job title too. Because we still are, back then we were still in an era of like people were looking at titles too, that if you had held a certain title, no matter if you were making like dirt for pay, if you were a manager, you know, that still elevated you. So that was a combination. So I ended up taking a job that paid $65,000, but it gave me a corporate claims manager title. So what I recognized that when I would do my market research, that if I have a risk manager, claims manager title, that would kind of dictate, give me an idea, like the pay would be in this range. So even though I wasn't making that, I knew that, all right, I'll stay here for a year or two and then get ready to pivot because I have this title. And so after being at that place for a year and a half, I was like, okay, started reworked my resume. Was like, okay, I've got project management skills. So what skills did I gain? I got a professional certification in Society of Human Resource Management, a SHRM, CP. So I could market myself as like a HR business partner, HR manager. But that's what I'm saying. Like, it's really important that as you look at your career holistically, like what titles, looking at pay, and also like what certifications can get it all to line up at certain times, like in your journey. Go ahead.
Right. There's a lot you touch on, but I want to touch on you taking, could you say you revamped your resume back in 2017 once you realized, the skill sets, just updating your resume. Can you just touch on how important that is to make sure you updating your resume? Cause I do see, and I when we spoke about this in the past, how you may have a specific skill set, but a lot of times people don't know how to translate that on the resume, right? And maybe you may be a great candidate for the job that you're looking at or the job title, but your resume is not speaking that as well. So how did you identify not only your skill set, but translate in a way where you're getting those hits and getting those interviews as well?
Right. So a good example that I used to tell career coaching clients, and when I've done like workshops, is look at the job posting that you're interested in and look at what the responsibilities are or the qualifications, and then think about projects that you've done and the skill sets from those projects or strategies, whatever you've implemented, and translate that. So if you say, I was like an account manager, that's not being a project manager, but the role you're going for is account manager, but a project manager. But I'm sure being an account manager, you had projects or you had to implement things, you had to manage certain processes. So speak to those. And that's what I would ultimately do. So I've pivoted like different industries just because I was able to look at the job posting and say, okay, well, I don't have my PMP, but I have a lot of these skills, because even if I'm a corporate claims manager, I had to set up a database. I had to work with multiple stakeholders. I had to collaborate with different teams. All that is project management related skills. So you just have to speak to it. You have to say, how did you improve that process? What were the deliverables? All those terms are terms you hear in the project management world. And I think that's where people need to learn to kind of like take what you have, see where you're trying to go, and try to marry the two so you're not necessarily lying. You're not saying like, oh, I was a project manager and I did all these things. It's like, I was a project manager in these instances. Here is how I qualify based on what you're asking. So, and then that would work for me to get to the interview. And then in the interview, they'll say like, hey, you're not a project manager. And that's when I can say, well, that's not my official title, but in these capacities, this is where I acted like a project manager, and then hit the examples. And they're like, oh, yep, absolutely. Yep. I can definitely see you creating a policy manual and having to gather feedback from all the departments, and you had to have it done in 6 months. That's a project. So not everything has to be software based. Not everything has to be like this huge, like move the needle kind of strategy or project. So that's my one tip I tell people.
I love the way that you segue that, because I think it's very important, especially in regards to resume building. I think that's the thing that that got me on the personal finance journey itself is like knowing my resume was crap. I had a 2-page resume and I kept on like pitching it to different people at this FSU's, almost like FSU job fair. I went there and people didn't care to look at it. I had to really muscle this woman to a corner because she was like, she didn't want to answer, but she's like, hey, I looked at your resume. It's like 2 pages, She answered me, it's like she didn't care. And ultimately, I went back home. I did just like every other millennial supposed to do, go on Google, find out this information. What's a good resume? What is a good resume? And then also understanding the language that's inside a resume. I've actually helped other people to your point, maybe not the professional, side hustle degree here, but the idea when you look at somebody's resume, it's like, what? You're like a doctor, but you underselling yourself.
You told me my resume was trash.
Yeah, like people like
you told me that before.
It was like 3 pages of weirdness. Like I was a cheerleader in high school. Like, why is this important right now?
No, like people don't understand that. You got to just put what's relevant to the role.
Yeah, and
I think
I was a majorette. I'm like,
right, like that's great. You had all those extracurriculars back 10 years ago. So again, I always tell people 7 to 10 years worth of work experience. Highlight your successful projects. Highlight if you were promoted twice in a year, like those kind of things. Like you want to really sell yourself. And I know like the old school resume was like, here's your job. This is the task that you did. And that was the old school resume, but definitely the shift in like, we want it to 1 page. You're very succinct. It's like, what did you do great? So when I look at it, I'm like, okay, I can see how I can leverage these person's skill sets in this role. And I think we are, starting to see a shift that just because you don't have certain qualifications, they're willing to overlook it if you're really good at selling yourself, in other areas, which that has been my experience. Like the VP role I'm in.
Why you had to scratch on the side a little in other areas?
Why you gotta do that?
Not everybody. Not for everybody.
George Santos sounds like, you have to sell yourself. Like,
where we get George Santos?
Hey, when I talk about the selling yourself, because I have had to help people with the interviews and try to interview coach, like, help people with their interviews, because I think I also come across people who have really great professional and educational backgrounds, but don't know how to sell themselves at all. And so it's like, that's one thing, you can rework your resume all you want, but if you do not know how to sell yourself and your value to other people, I mean, you ain't.
Yeah, and I think you ain't going nowhere. That's the second part of it too. There's 2 parts. So you got to review your resume. You got to know what it is. You can't say that you're an Excel professional where you don't even be on Excel like that. I've seen so many people. I'm like, stop with the cap. Just stop it. And on top of that, there's the other people that will say, well, I'm punctual, not punctual. Which one is it's like attention to detail? Is that the one? And I'm like,
detail oriented.
I'm looking at the resume. I'm like, you got like 5 grammatical errors in one sentence right over here. Like, how are you detail oriented? How is the spacing in your document? Like the spacing in your document is all off. There's extra spaces all over the place.
Well, and that's the whole. And that's what I'm saying. It's like I've had people who say they're like, advanced in Microsoft Word, and I tell them, okay, this is how you edit the resume I gave you, and they're like, how do you bullet and tab? And I'm like
you cannot be advanced then, my friend. Like,
yeah, right.
Like, I'm advanced. I'm using Google. How is everybody not? What's going on? Stop with this information. And I think I want to add this here for anybody that's listening, because there's different people at different experience levels. You could be in your 10-year, your 5-year, or you could be in the first year. And I would say that you're better off keeping a resume that's completely lighter. Like, it doesn't matter if the resume is not completely filled to that 1 page. You don't have, this is not like one of those skill sets where you just keep dropping words in here and hope that it clicks. Sometimes it's better to have a succinct thing that says, this is who you're getting. And then the second part becomes very important, where you sell yourself in regards to, hey, can you work with different teams at the interview? Because there's 2 parts to getting that job. Is the resume and then the interview. And if you're good at the interview as well, they could look at it and say, you know what, I could work with this person. They might not have all the skills, but their interpersonal skills is pretty good. They seem to be able to communicate with different people. They have the language down, and I could work with that. If you don't have the language down, it's kind of like, I don't know what to do with you, man. Like, and if you're coming in, well, especially if people are coming in with these interviews and they already come off as problematic, it's a problem for me. I'm not even hiring you. Like, I don't even know you, and I don't want to hire you. Like, I was like, I don't want
Right.
to hire you at all. The first statement says, well, I don't want to work in an industry that doesn't promote my diversity. I'm like, well, sir, I don't know where we started off at the wrong foot. It's 5 minutes in this conversation. I don't know, man. I don't know if this is a place for me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying, because I feel like I've helped a lot of people rework their resumes and their resumes look great, but then they're like, I went to the interview and then it, I just, it all went bad. And I'm just like, so how did you answer? Like, what questions did you get and how did you answer them? And then I'm like, oh, now I know why the interview went the way it went, because you didn't sound confident. You kind of are like using hedging language. It's like, you got to sell it. Like, if you really want to be in this role, like, show why you deserve to be in the role or why your skills are transferable. So I think that's another piece, is like selling the current skills you have and how they are transferable to the role or where you're trying to go. Because I will say, in this VP role, they had preferred someone who had a PMP. And I said straight up, I was like, yeah, I don't have that. And it's not to say I won't get it, but it's not on my radar to get my PMP. But what I did say is, this is the value that I bring. This is the project management experience I do have. And then, ultimately they were like, yeah, that was just like a preferred, but you obviously, and mind you, they had me interview with people who like had their PMPs and they were like, oh yeah, she's more than qualified. So that's what I'm saying. Like, even though that wasn't ever my official title, because I was corporate claims manager, I was a risk analyst, I was all these things, they recognize that you don't have to have these qualifications necessarily just to, they help in certain cases, but they're not always required. But you got to be able to sell that why you have the experience. And so
I want to say one more thing here. I ran into some different people before, because I've used to really help people with either resumes, interviews, and it just often like friends, families, like, hey, if you got this thing, let's look at it together type of scenario. If you send it to me, I'm not going to glance it over and like, oh, it's good. I'm really going to take my time diving into it. And then to the point where you do the interviews, there's one girl, I remember her in college. We were just doing an interview for a pageant and she cried. She broke down crying. And there's a big thing to do with what's going on in her head as well. So if she's going to go into just a pageant thing doing that at a workplace, when they ask you, hey, what value do you bring to the job? She went into a space that was so dark. Like, her mom always talked to that she was nothing. There's a lot of interpersonal things that you have to also work on before you go into these interviews, because
very true.
Yes, you might have the experience. Yes, you might have the resume or the credentials, but if you're not healed, it's harder to kind of like answer those questions. I don't know if I wanted to bring that up. It's like mental health awareness.
No, it's so true. So I will say, like, even through my breakup, because being a single mom, like, I definitely did therapy like all through probably up until like as of late last year, but also and understanding like and healing myself and like, but to see my value, right? So like, these are very strategic job moves. And I had to mentally prepare myself like, okay, if I do this, do I have enough confidence in myself that if I make this move, am I going to perform in this job? Yeah. And so the interesting story is when I moved to South Florida. So when I was the corporate claims manager, I was like, I think I was fighting just to make like 70,000. And they were like, nah, you get the standard like 3%. And that's it. No bonus this year. I was like, yep, I'm out of here. You want me to do all this work, travel, all this kind of stuff. And you're just like, oh, charge it to the business credit card. Go, you guys can have like entertainment fun. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm good. Like that doesn't put money in my pocket, like in any type of way. So, basically I interviewed for a job in South Florida to be a risk analyst that would pay 75,000. Got that job, didn't like it. And so in 30 days, I found another job that paid a little bit more. Like, I think $2,000 more a year. And it was closer to my house. But all of that, like, I didn't leave one job until I had the other one. And so I always try to say, like, look for a job while you have one, and then don't leave your job. So I've actually had, like, my job resume the last few years looks kind of funny because I've actually worked 2 jobs at the same time. Like, they'll like overlap slightly. Or I'll start like end on a Thursday, start on a Monday. So So I'm a big believer, like, if you can stay your 2 weeks, if they let you, obviously. But I mean, I don't, if you're like in a toxic work environment and you're over it, I mean, make sure you have that figured out before you do that, before you just leave. But yeah, like I couldn't do the micromanagement in that first job. Then I found another job that literally was the same title for more pay. And I was like, what am I doing? So I just went to that job. And I was there for 2.5 years. And then it went into the pandemic. And then they were like, okay, everyone's got to come back to the office. I was like, yeah, I'm not trying to come back to the office. That ain't me. And in that job, I actually negotiated a $10,000 raise and a promotion. So I went from a risk analyst to a senior risk analyst. And how that worked out was George Floyd, I think this was like a year after George Floyd had died. And I was like the only Black person in my risk, like finance and taxes in that realm. And they were trying to retain all their talent. And so at the time when I got my review, it was like meeting expectations because no one can get higher than a 3, no one gets a 4, and you get the standard 3%. But what I did was, because I have an HR background, I documented very well all my accomplishments and goals in my personal review. And what happened is when my manager didn't like promote me or nothing happened, because I put in there that when I came into this role, I was doing the job and responsibilities of the person who was in a senior role. And I put that all in my review just to show like, yeah, you were paying me, you were saying I'm a risk analyst, but I was already doing the work of a senior risk analyst. And I put that all in my review. And so his boss saw it and HR got involved and they basically gave me a promotion to a senior risk analyst with a pay bump. Because even though my manager didn't believe in me, but because I was documenting and just showing like a trail, how it exceeded all my goals and everything, it allowed me to get that promotion and pay bump. So I think I ended up at 85 at that point. And then a few months later, I was like, oh, we're trying to go back to the office. Not
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm used to working from home. And so at that point, I realized I made the choice, like I only want to work remote jobs, but my salary has to be at a certain place. And so at this point, I had gotten my second master's from the University of Florida in management, because at that point, I'm thinking I want to be like, I want to move up to like VP, like higher level roles. And my job, like I got actually quite a bit of scholarship and my job paid for it. So I actually didn't have to pay for that degree. I think if I did, I think I only paid out of pocket like $1,500, I think in total for like books and stuff. So, and that degree was like a 1-year program. It was quick, over, done. But at that point I was like, okay, I want to get closer to 100,000.
Yeah, I think it's true to be said too, because for most times when we in these roles, we become a little bit complacent when we reach our ideal like salary. And I don't think anything's wrong with that. But in terms of like career prospects, what you're trying to do is not only what you do, but how well you do it as in your role. So having these skill sets, because you mentioned in your story about attaining these certifications or attaining additional degree, I think is more or less to be said too, is where do you see yourself, in 2 or 3 years in this role? Do you see yourself going somewhere else in this industry, saying your current employer? Like, how do you see yourself evolving? Or is there another, like you mentioned, a specific title that you want to obtain, or another role that you want to get into? I think it's something you have to kind of write down and kind of like figure out if this is something you want to do long term, because a lot of times a lot of employers will I guess dangle all these corporate credit cards, these nice rewards, feed you every 2 or 3 hours, my job, and do all these things, but they don't pay you. They don't want to compensate you, based on your worth. And I think it's something to kind of like look into, like, how can I level up my skill set? What else do I need to kind of get to that next level? So my question is, once you kind of figure that out, how did you figure out, like, specifically, do you need a degree or just certificates? Because I know we spoke in the past how it seems as though the industry is changing. Like certificates are just as much, valuable than a degree.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I'm all for like the free resources as well. So like I do actually have a lot of certifications I got for free, like just Googling like free certifications, like, or like my job would pay for me to go to certain programs that didn't require me to commit any additional time to working there. So like, because I was trying to get into the diversity, equity, inclusion space, like the DEI space, I started finding certificates that were like free or $100 to like get certified in like DEI and all these kind of things. And then so my job would pay for some of that because of course, after George Floyd, everybody's on this like DEI kick and everybody can go get. So I was able to do that. But I think for me, when I looked at my whole skill set and I saw where I was trying to go, like if I was trying to be in C-suite, higher level management, I recognized that all these men in particular, not that there were women, there were many women, had backgrounds in business. They just did. And not to say I couldn't go take an accounting course, but just understanding that there was just knowledge there that I needed to acquire. And also understanding the importance of networks. And so that's how, and thinking about what my time is and my bandwidth being a mom, right? So that's how actually I decided to pursue a 1-year degree, where the classes were like 8 weeks, and they gave me basically like a high level rundown of like, this is when you do financial accounting, this is as a manager, this is how it would be looked at. And so these are the things, like these are the skills you need to have. And then through that program, I connected with a lot of people who own businesses, who were entrepreneurs, who worked at larger companies. And so I kept in touch. So if I ever need good references or help with anything, like they've still helped me to this day when I'm asked for recommendations when I was applying for my doctorate. But again, I say choosing school versus like certifications is again, where career planning, like what is your career path and how does it align with your personal goals and life too? I think that for me is like, my goal would be by the time I'm in my 40s, this is like general, but I would like to work for myself again in like a consulting capacity. But I understand that I need to hit certain titles or gain certain experiences or certifications to play in a league where I am consulting for like a Verizon, like a larger company, because I see peers or people we've consulted with and I see like the repertoire that they have. And I've spoken to them and just pick their brain, just be like, hey sis, or whoever, like, this is your business. And a lot of those people are consultants and they work a full-time job too, because they get picked up and they're like, we see you are a consultant for us, but we really want you to be like the chief diversity officer for our organization. I've seen 2 Black women have that happen to them, where I'm like, they were consulting and then people just like, I'll give you money to be our chief diversity officer. And I'm like, oh, and it happened in their 40s. And I'm like, can I be one of those people that get picked up and they make like 2 whole paychecks, consulting and being a chief diversity officer, making good money. So I think that's career planning. Where do you need to be? Where am I at now? Where am I trying to go? And like putting things in place to make that happen. And so I did that. And then I jumped to work for a law firm where I got 95. And then again, I had to fight again at the review time to get, like, I think I finally got the 5% increase because they tried to rate me, I think, a little bit lower than someone who was my peer. And I just kind of had to say, I don't agree with this review. And basically, I was told to like humble myself because I told them, I said, I have all this education. I have more certifications than this person in this area. And eventually HR came back. And of course, again, in my review, I wrote a storybook of everything and all my qualifications. And it got overturned. So I could get bumped to 99,000 at that point. And then I was like, bump this because it's very clear they don't see my value. The fact that you were willing to say someone was, better than me in these areas when it's like their education, their professional experience doesn't even touch like what I'm doing. But that's what I'm saying. That's also that self-talk to believe like I have to say like it's not me being like cocky or arrogant. It's me being like, hold on, even on paper, all of this is not making sense. And
yeah,
I'm going
you got to
fight.
advocate for yourself. You definitely got to advocate for yourself, especially as a woman. You have to give
in a
them
professional way.
Yeah, in a professional way, exactly.
Yeah.
Pure email. But you have to advocate for yourself as well. And do you think like over time with obtaining your certificates and degrees, but also like different level of job titles, that has kind of gained you like, that confidence in yourself? Because I know a lot of people feel like they have the imposter syndrome, or they feel like, they're not included in the circle or these discussions, and feel like, they will be exposed at some level that they're not supposed to be here. How did you feel like you kind of overcame that?
Yeah, so the imposter syndrome is very real. But what I actually started looking at was just through like statistics, through like research. If I looked at my white male counterparts and the roles and leadership positions that they were in and looked at their education's lack of certifications or experience, I had to be like, if they can be there, I have every right to be there if I'm coming in super qualified and all this experience and knowledge. And so that actually kind of boosted that really like in seeing, like looking at my peers, looking at my managers and being like, they can't even pivot an Excel table, but you want me to do it for you and tell you what the data insights are so you can go talk to these C-suite people and explain all these insights that Holly put together for you. And I like started to have a problem with that because I'm like, you're not even capable, but you make double the money that I make. And you can't even, like, it's almost like I'm a data person, but you can't even check my work, but you're my manager. And I would be like, that just didn't sit right with me. And so I had to start really like, that's what I'm saying, that self-talk, like, yo, if he can be a director and like, he doesn't even have half the skill sets that I have, I really need to like, I really need to level up. Like, I really need to like level up. And so that's when I started looking at like VP roles, like higher level roles, like director level roles, because I was just like, even, like I said, even the chief diversity officer, like people want data, but don't even know how to like filter an Excel pivot table or even how to like, people want this stuff. And I understand as you get higher up, you need to delegate and you can't be your hands in everything. But I look at it like, how can I critique somebody else if I don't even know how to do it in the first place? And I feel like I used to have some type of idea or some place to start. And yeah, so that's kind of how, like, I just looked at it like, if these people can be doing it, I need, like, what's the excuse? And obviously these people can't present for nothing. I'm like, these are your presentation skills? Like, that's where I just,
hey, you need to humble yourself, Holly.
Right?
Humble yourself.
Like, no, I really
stop with the foolishness. I think something that's very important here is that there are some people that just present a bravado and confidence, and typically it's been written about, like, white men has been, when they write on their resume that they manage people, they believe it. Like, that means like, it's like, hey, there's like, I manage people. Like, sometimes when we right out of college, they were like, I manage people. In their minds, like, well, I manage my fraternity, so therefore I manage people. But or they're like, hey, I manage my peers, like my siblings, because I'm the oldest one, so therefore I'm a manager. It's literally that simple, but it's as much as you have to believe it. Yeah, you have to believe it. So when they go into an interview, right, and no matter what's in the resume, they go into the interview. If you're asking them questions, they believe it. It's something to their minds. Whereas a lot of people, especially I would say women, really suffer a lot from that, where they're like, nah, I didn't really do that. I didn't, even though they might have been the one to raise or literally physically feed kids in their family and all that stuff. They're like, that's nothing. They always kind of like, you take away from yourself.
Absolutely.
And then you go into this interview kind of half baked, and double checking yourself like, well, I didn't really manage anybody. And even though my role last year was a VP managing 3 people, it just really wasn't, at the level and caliber. I'm like, you were a VP at this technology company doing this, that, and the third, and it's a lot to deal with. But I think I want to ask you a question about this thing. I found out maybe this year, because we've been seeing a lot of people being laid off, and the layoff typically comes out the expense of the last person coming in. The last person came in after the whole George Floyd thing, when they tried like, hey, we're going to bring in all the diversity. Tomorrow, this place will be half Black. Like, it's going to be
right.
We got the flyers, we got the posters, and we're buying MLK statements. It's going to be on the wall. It's going to work out. And then, hey, when you start laying off people, it's like, we're going to actually send this email out, this blast, and we're just going to
do it on a Zoom call.
And then majority of those people tend to be the last people that were hired, which is the minority people. So when they did the deep dive, we found out that the chief diversity officers typically are white. It's the wildest thing I ever heard. I'm like, so for me to tell me that's your chief diversity officer, it's a white person?
Or pander, or if they are not white, they pander to like white fragility. So they are not going to really fight for the systemic changes that need to happen. That was my experience. And I can say I left in time because another peer of mine who is Black was later let go right after me. And then the person that was a peer to me, I think I left on a Wednesday. She was promoted to a manager on Friday. So I knew, but mind you, I could see the writing on the wall happening, because the fact that I had to fight so hard for that raise and just to be evaluated at a 4 out of 5 versus a 3 out of 5, when it was like, and it goes to show, just because some people talk a lot in meetings, it's like, but say nothing. But because it's like the squeaky wheel gets the oil, I also had to kind of adapt that mindset, where it's not to say speak up in meetings, but I think just advocating for yourself and just recognizing like, oh, no, I actually did a whole bunch of work. Just because I'm not like speaking about it in the meetings of like walking you through my whole process. But if you actually wanted to have a one-on-one, I can break it down quarter by quarter, everything that I've done. And I think that's also what I had to learn, is that it's not to say I can't advocate for myself. I think I also had to recognize at what point is it efficient just to put my time and energy to looking for another job and then keep trying to advocate and sell myself here. And so that's where I left. And then I end up where I'm at now as a VP, because I just recognize that you're telling me to humble myself and I have to fight for you to recognize like all the accomplishments that I'm doing. And that's just probably not where I should be. And then, I still work from home and I make more money. And so there's that piece for the salary jumps. But also I think I want to tell people, always negotiate your salary. And I know as women, we don't do that as well as men do. But
as
no, I've
well
always
as men. Hey, we're gonna get back to that. I don't negotiate as well. I don't negotiate as well. So
you don't negotiate.
I'm gonna say this. One, resume. You talked about it. It's very big. Work on your resume. Second, work on your interview skills. But when you are on the job, number 3, for anybody that's listening, start really notating what you're doing, at least on a quarterly level, because that's
update
the
your
way
LinkedIn
that's
regularly.
Yeah, it's going to help you. It's going to help you kind of develop more of the confidence in what you're doing, who you are, where you're going. Sometimes you look at the last quarter, like, well, I didn't do so good. So you're going to end up like start building upon what you did last time and the last time. So you're not waiting until a mid-year review to figure out what life is going on. Like, hey, manager, tell me what I had done. Or like, you're not waiting for an annual review to be surprised. Like, oh, shoot, I'm surprised. Like, you have to get on board with your own professional development, with your own life, as to where it's going and how you're getting there. And that's the big thing I'm getting from this. I did want to push back just a little bit on the ideal that men are great negotiators, I think that's always a misnomer when we talk about men in general, because we lump in all men. And majority of the men that are winning in this situation are typically negotiating, doing all that stuff, or typically are white men.
No, so that's what I was going to say. That was going to be like the second piece.
Yeah, thank you. Diversity and me.
But the research does. But in human resources, the research does show men in general, not all,
men in general
are more likely to negotiate. But white men are definitely always going to be.
Like they're the one that's pushing that average of the general, because majority of Black men don't really negotiate as much as we think it is. A majority even Asian men, because it's not even part of their cultural norms.
Culturally, correct.
The negotiation. So when we think about men, we're always like, men are doing this. Like, no, white men are doing this. A lot of the Black people or Hispanic people, when you look at the numbers, the salaries, the industries that we're in, where the income trajectory, you start noticing a pattern there that only these select group of men are really the one winning, and the other group of men are really struggling and figuring it out. We still need to, the only reason I bring it up, because we also need to do that work. And I don't want to misconstrue other ladies like, oh, all these other men are getting it. No. Your husband, your cousin, your brother or your nephew, they're all not negotiating. We still do need to get all these same lessons that you're giving out right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think too, like, because research is still showing that men in a lot of races are still making more than like their peers. So like Asian men will still make more than Asian women. Not much, but I'm saying like, but also we have to say, like, when people from the HR side, like when people do negotiate, right? I always say, like, I always just tell everybody, just negotiate. Like the worst they're going to say is no. But I also say, like, if they say no, then that's when you start asking those follow-up questions. So when is the soonest that my salary can be reviewed? So if it's a 90-day thing, is it, you have to wait till the annual review? I always say you need to ask those follow-up questions, because it's not to say you're going to say no, but I think it shows interest and like longevity. And I think with the market, why a bunch of people are getting laid off, I think prior to all these layoffs, it was very competitive out here, where companies were literally like, like early pandemic, where they were like, oh, we want you to come and we'll give you all these things if you come here. And so people would literally like make large salary jumps from like, I was like an 80 at Google, but Facebook offered me 175. And like, you're like, what? To do less work, better title. And you're like, how is this happening? So, but I will say that seemed a lot in tech, because that necessarily wasn't my experience in the more HR side of things. But I will say I always negotiate, and a good tool is payscale.com, where you can enter your like education, your work experience, and the title you're going for, and we'll give you like a range of like what people are making. But I always try to shoot for the higher end of that range when I negotiate. And so this one lady for this most recent, she's like, the highest we pay in Jacksonville is like 105. And I said, well, that's not going to work. I said, if you would like me to interview for this role, it needs to at least be, I think I said like 110 or something like that, like base. We didn't talk bonus. We didn't talk anything else. And so again, but I have to stand ground, because it's like, I don't have to waste my time interviewing. And then I say, well, you found me on LinkedIn, so if you'd like me to interview for this position. And I think that's what I'm saying. I know people they can be afraid to like lose out on opportunities because they might say they're being aggressive, but it's not that I'm being aggressive. I think it's just the way you word it, because it's like, well, you sought me out. I have a job. I don't need to leave my job, even if I want to secretly, because it's toxic. But I think, and because I did that, I got what I wanted. So at the end, for a starting salary, not including, and then I was able to negotiate the bonus potentially down the line. So I think I just say, like, figure out your budget and like what salary increases you'd like to see that can impact your life or, your budget. Like, what do you want to see? And I think that's how I dictate what I'll accept or where I'm trying to go. Cause I mean, we all would like to say, I want to make 225, like, but that might not be realistic, like for the title you're trying to go. But I always say, like, if I see a range that's like 100, this role typically pays 110 to 150. All right. So then I have to start doing the research and be like, 150, these people typically have this many years. I'm in between. So then I just try to shoot for like a range that's like, I might say like, okay, well, it has to be between 115 to 125 for me to even consider it. Because I don't have that much experience, but I have at least this education. And so that's kind of how I try to figure out where I negotiate. But I always try to shoot at least like 5,000-10,000 over offer.
I think knowledge is definitely power when we talk about negotiations and we talk about how we can leverage our skill sets, or even just having conversation with HR or having conversations with recruiters, right? Because if you're unaware of how much a job even just generally pays, like if you Google the job title in your state, you're not unaware, that's leaving like $10,000 to $20,000 on the floor, because you have to look at recruiter as a business. They going to approach you with the smaller scale of the salary and try to get as much out of you, as they can on a lower, money transparency for salaries. So it's one of those things you have to discuss it, but also once you get into that role, again, going back to that first point I made about not being complacent, it's always good to just entertaining recruiters who are reaching out to you on LinkedIn or just having interviews to see what is going on in your industry. And sometimes that, $10,000 negotiation that you did in 2018, yesterday price is not today price, right?
Listen.
So that's something you have to kind of keep tabs on, how the industry is changing and what can you do to make sure you're on top of it.
Yeah, that's true. And I will say, like, in some of my salary negotiations, like I had to say, well, I live in South Florida, so you offering me 90 is not going to work down here. And I think it's at the time when all the rent was like jumping to like, like 5,000 a month for like a 1-bedroom or whatever. But, but also like you said, that's why, going to your point, knowledge is power, like understanding like where you live and the cost of living. And just because they're going to offer you're making 75 and you're going to go make 80, but you probably should negotiate for 90, because if cost of living in your area is going up, like you need to you're not going to feel that.
And we haven't even discussed taxes. We haven't even discussed taxes or benefits.
Taxes about to get real serious.
So when you start making
Holly thinking she on top of the world. Let's go.
I already know. I was like, why? I see nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm telling you. Hey, you need to start doing the whole personal finance thing. I'm telling you, they don't play that game at north of 100K. They're like, yo, okay, run me my cut. That's 30-40%.
Wasn't it publicized? I forgot which media platform. Like $100,000 salary in New York is like equivalent to 36,000 based on just taxes and all these other things that you have to pay for.
High cost of living,
of living, right?
People living in closets. There's a lot to be said
about the amount of money you make. That's true, but you also need to keep in mind not to increase your lifestyle creep, right?
Lifestyle inflation.
You got to get the new car to match the new job. Got to get the new award.
First of all,
cool. You can't just drive a Nissan Versa, out here. You gotta have to jump up.
I want that push to start. I want that energy. I want the energy.
I need the heated seats in Florida.
I do.
Florida? Heated seats.
No, it's so funny you say that, because I think it was like, I was like, okay, I need to get a bigger car just because now I have, with my significant other, we have more kids, so I just need a bigger car. We need a third row.
Yeah.
And so, I look at these.
Like you couldn't just put them all them kids inside. Like we used to just.
You can't legally. You can't do that.
We used to just jump on these kids inside the car. But now you're too big. You're too good for this.
I can't with you, LG. No.
Now you need a bigger car. Like we used to put the kid in the trunk. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that?
Yeah, when you get in an auto accident and they don't want to play them planes.
Hey, you just don't. You take the kid out and then you be like, hey, the claim didn't happen.
And I'm sitting here like, people are like, oh.
Yeah, you're speaking all types of messed up stuff, and your legal advice is making sure that your sound is not coming in.
We can't hear you a little bit, Holly.
Yeah, hey, it's all legal. Legal is like, take her off. Take her off.
saying. Like, I just kind of feel like, yeah, it's just interesting that I always say, like, that's a part of it too. Like, where are you living, examining the cost of living. And yeah, like you said, you don't want lifestyle creep, but just making sure that when you jump jobs, it's actually worth it. Because you might break down the calculation and be like, yeah, it's probably not best that I move to this new place and they're not giving me no relocation. And the pay bump is pretty much okay. It's like $50 a month. Like, it might not even be worth all that move. And so I think sometimes people forget that part when in the negotiation. So I was like, so where are you trying to go? Where are you trying to be? What does it make sense? So
it's a bit of both, or maybe two things can be true, but I think it's lifestyle inflation and just inflation just in general of how things are going up and costing. Cause even like I mentioned to you guys before on the podcast, is HOA started from $280 to $350 within 3 years of being here, right? My insurance went up as well. You know, your taxes can slightly increase, property taxes, but you know, I had an issue with my car and I'm getting a new vehicle. So those are the things that, you know, life just happens, you know, like if you end up having children or whatever situation may be, is like, yeah, you need to kind of reevaluate your salary and how that works, because even if you're budgeting as tight as you can, life happens. Things happen, right? So you have to kind of give yourself, like, it seems so you were alluding to this, is that that room and that space for a little bit extra money to kind of like help you push forward. Because if you're trying to, you know, contribute to your retirement account, your benefits, you know, if you have dependents, taxes, right? It's like, oh, it doesn't leave a little room. But can you say, Holly, now that, you know, you are a 6-figure woman, can you say, like, with everything with just, you know, having children and inflation, do you feel a difference, or just more on just the title in itself, or just the more exposure that you're receiving in terms of experience?
Wow. So I definitely feel like the title change and the exposure is great. As a mother with 2 kids, and I don't pay daycare costs, thank God. No, it's definitely expensive. And what I will say, like, I do see, like I said, I do see the salary increase. And so I that was all calculated. But I don't know what this is in life, but it always seems like you get a salary increase, but then it's like, why does it, like, life happens, like, oh, so your kid needs, like, kid breaks an arm, great, you know, it's like, and but I also want to say, like, in your negotiation, look at your benefits. Always ask for the benefit ask for the benefit cost up front. Because I'm telling you, people think they're like, oh, I get more salary, but then you find out the benefits cost more at the new job. And you didn't take that into the cost. And then you're like, wow, I actually make the same paycheck that I was making before because the benefits cost a lot. So in the negotiation, always ask for the benefits package and their costs up front. So you can get that and include that in your negotiations, in your calculations. But yes, I always feel like it's like I've got all these salary bumps, but then, like, as my kids have gotten older, they require different needs that cost more money. And so, but I'll say that because I've kind of made those jumps and stayed ahead of it, I haven't had to, like, go into debt or anything. Like, if my kids have needed something, there's been no question. I've been, you know, but I know that's not the case for everybody. But I think as a single mom who, in the event that, say, the child support doesn't come in that month, I'm not hurt. I don't need it per se. And that's where that's actually one of my underlying goals, was just to be a self-sufficient adult, that in the event that, for my kids, that if their dad didn't have his portion that month for whatever reason, life continues on, and they don't feel anything. So it's not like they have to go without, and so that was just also one of my underlying motivations too, just to keep elevating from the salary and the job, and, like, selling my value to people and putting myself in positions or in networks. So I realized, like, even if I leave this job, I know people in leadership in other orgs that I could, like, lean on and ask for help, for recommendations. And that's kind of how I leverage, like, professors or, like, people I've had. And even if they want me to speak at events, okay, there's a charge. Okay, we'll pay you, you know, like, So I've been able to just, again, selling myself and not let imposter syndrome stop me. Definitely been there. But again, I would just say analyze your skill set. Like when you do like that self-awareness, self-evaluation yearly of all the things you've accomplished or trying to, make sure that stuff gets updated on your LinkedIn's. Because I've actually found my last two jobs through LinkedIn, and I wasn't looking. They were just looking for people and reached out to me. And that also makes negotiating easier because they want you. There are times when there's like blanket recruitments, but when people are really like thinking you can actually have a one-on-one rapport, it does make it a lot easier more comfortable to negotiate. I will say that versus applying on the website and hope you get picked. So keep updating your LinkedIn with everything that you bring to the table, whether it's professional or things you're doing outside of work. So if you are involved in extracurricular organizations like board members, you publish articles, please put that on your LinkedIn, because you never know who will see it and connect. And I do that, and I've been reached out by people from different orgs just to be like, hey, and I look and they're like, why do you have like a ton of people, like, and there are people in the space that I know I can come back to later on, that I work in, that I can say, hey, I'm actually for my doctorate, I need to interview people who have these skill sets. Can can I pick your brain about this and stuff? So yeah, that's what I would say. Like LinkedIn's a very powerful tool. Update your resume, keep a journal where you update your skills and your goals. Yeah.
Yeah. One, definitely not the majorette stuff, the high school stuff. You don't need to,
Yeah.
add that. But for anything that's more important, more like branding yourself, understanding who you are, and falling in love with the space that you're in the industry. Some people are just, you got a job, but then you're like, oh, I don't like it. I don't see you promote, because you might not be 100% invested in that career.
Very true.
And when you are 100% invested in that career, let's say you're doing extra research on the side because you're interested in it, and you're posting it and you're sharing content that's relevant to your career on LinkedIn, not you balling out and having a good time, like using LinkedIn like it's Facebook, but still, making those changes.
Some people do.
Yeah, some people do. People, wow, man, I'm just seeing some wild stuff on LinkedIn. I'm like, this is not Facebook, guys, not Instagram. Like, it's getting weird. But I would like to say that, hey, one of those things I think that's very important about the shifts and the work that you've been doing in that space is the confidence and the joy, the absolute joy that you have. And I think that's what the kids are seeing as well. Having grown up in a household full of people that didn't really kind of see their dreams fully materialize, it feels a certain way. The house feels a little tight, like all the time. It's a little tight. But when you find like the person that's really growing, developing, taking risk, and really, finding themselves, the kids look at you like, man, my mom ain't that bad. My ain't that bad.
So because I say they're like, oh, my mom's a VP, or they're like, oh, you have all these degrees. But what they see is like they see someone turning their skill sets into like multiple opportunities, and they see like when mommy works, we can go to Disney World if you ask me. There is no like, I think they understand that mommy's hard work. Like my kids are like, Mom, you're always on the computer. You work so hard. They're like, you got to be a millionaire one day as hard as you work on the computer. Yeah,
they're like you're gonna be rich. Hey, they're like, close the door. She's still working. Let her work. We need this money. We need this new trip coming up. We need the money.
Right. They're like, yeah. I said, leave me alone. Mommy's got to work for this Disney trip. No, but I'm saying, but you're right, because I think, particularly not just the kids seeing that. I think I have daughters, so just seeing like other women of color just excelling and like moving in their career, and teaching my daughters to advocate for themselves and that certain salaries are attainable. And I think that's ultimately like, again, because I'll say this, I didn't have that same motivation like pre-kids. I was just like, I'm going to stay in this job, I'm going to work, and hopefully I get recognized.
I'm going to hang out with Atlanta on the weekends, hey,
right,
I'm going to brunch out. I'm going to hang out again. Like,
no, it was like, I was just like, I would work long hours and then just hope at some point someone would see it. And then I would
living the soft life.
Right. And then I was no, but I mean, it's like a kind of like like this bystander, like hopefully like someone will come by and be like, oh, you are a great worker. Let me pull you up and help you. And there was not as like,
let me touch your life. Like, God,
right,
like today you're now VP. Like what? Like, I can't believe this happening to me. Like this is happening. I
like
guess
I
we watch way too many Disney movies. Like we thought, hey, somebody's just gonna pop up, like boom, now your life is set. Like,
right. No, it's like we gotta it's I kind of feel like if I think about it, it's like this like whole, I hate to be like nerdy, like multiverse kind of thing. Like I felt like I was living in like one universe prior to kids. And then when I had kids, it was like I'm in this whole another universe, and like to see the progress in just like about 5 years that I've made just trying to navigate, I'm like, dang, a lot's happened in 5 years, but necessary and intentional and calculated. So that's why I try to tell like other single mothers who are like, I want to move, but I'm so afraid. I don't have a job and and I'm like, put a plan together and calculate it. What's your budget need to be to live in a new city? Like all those things. So I try to give advice where I can on this because I know it's scary to like leave a job.
And it's hard.
Or
psychologically,
it's hard
too. And then sometimes some people are gonna look at you like, well, she was lucky. It worked out for her, but yet you know the truth about the story that you've gone through and the challenges, the tribulations, and the amount of change that you have to put in order for you to move to this next level. So the 5 years, as dramatic as it is, it's a lot of work throughout all those years, a
lot of behind the scenes.
Yeah, that really put it together. So you're not an overnight success. You're an every night success. Yeah. Like every night you've been putting in some work. Hey man, you've been putting in some work I'm an overnight success for the last 20 years. Like what?
I think that's what I think ultimately like I would want people to take away is I think that you do have to put in the work. It is not somebody's just going to be like, there are those like exceptions or someone was just like, oh, you're great. Like Warren Buffett might recognize somebody and then be like, I'm going to just mentor you all the way up and just make you great. But like,
or Oprah read your book. And like that one time Oprah read your book and she said it on the thing and you become a multimillionaire because Oprah read it.
Right. Like you got like you pretty much got the Oprah like badge of approval and then your life takes off but that's what I'm saying. That's not the case. And I think that's what I realized, like, oh, I actually have to put in some work in learning how to advocate, change my resume, because I think how you're talking, like, it's a skill that you have to work on, like over and over and get good at, because only you can really sell yourself. And that's so funny because I help people with their resumes and I had to tell them like, you work this job. So tell me what you did great. And so I think that's what people need to understand is like, you really have to do the self work so you can really sell yourself.
Got to do that shadow work, as they say. I wanted to add this because I think at one point we talked about getting that 3% raise and how much is really valued. Sometimes people's like, yo, I got that 3% raise. I'm going to go ball out. Like that first night, they're like, yo, I'm about to go really live it up this weekend. It's going to be a weekend to remember because I just got the 3% raise. And I just did a calculation for somebody making $60,000 and they get a 3% raise, how much it comes down to mathematically. First, the raise itself, when it's 3% at $60K, you're getting $1,800. That's the amount per year. That's a per year increase. And you're not going to get all 18. There's going to be some taxes along with it. Let's just say 20% taxes. So it's down to $1,440. So divide that by the bi-weekly, you're getting around like $55. Thank
you for the extra tank of gas.
Thank you for the tip. So if you go blow it, I'm gonna have a great time. I'm about to go on this trip for like $2,500, whatever it is. You just blew the entire year of the actual increase. All while food, cars, and whatever going on, inflation's going on. And sometimes you really got to like pace yourself, right? Yes, you made that increase, but if you have a good plan and you know where you're going to be, that's not where you're going to stop at. That means you need to keep working. That means you keep developing, keep crafting, keep working on communication, your branding, so on and so forth, because that 60K plus 3% is nice. but you probably want to be shooting for the 85, the 100 at one point. You even get to then later on, when you make this money, don't start blowing it on everything else, like a new Tesla.
Right.
I get that new Tesla in 80K car. I'm like, you can't even afford it. You can't even afford this.
Yeah, that's like a whole nother conversation for sure. Because I have people who basically get raises and then buy cars that
I know them, you know, they got cars, they got outfits, they got like, I gotta get a whole new outfit to go with this new industry. But you
not the hand clap, LG.
Like, hey, they look at me, whole new outfit. I got to go do it. I'm like, I know you don't.
Yeah, that's like society thing, like the projection of just like, because you're at a certain title, you should be moving a certain way. That's just like, but again, like
I gotta go travel. I gotta get a whole new outfit. Like people in that new place have ever seen you before. They don't remember who you are. Like that same outfit that you wore over here, they never seen it. Never seen it. They never seen it.
No, I work from home, so it's like, yeah, as long as
my goddaughter said
okay.
My goddaughter said she's going to Disney and she needs money to go get a new outfit. I'm like, you're 17. You're going to Disney. Like, it's like what are you doing?
Yeah, but that's a thing though. Like I saw it on social media. I didn't realize like people like were actually like wearing, like their parents, like the mom and the daughter were wearing matching outfits. I was like, oh, that's
I'm sitting. Well, she's definitely not gonna wear no matching outfit, but I'm sending her $100, and you know, I'm like, it's your birthday, I guess, and
make it work.
I'm still a little soft here and there, but back in my mind, like, not my day. Back in my day, when you went to Disney World, you went with the same outfit you wore yesterday, and the week before.
Yeah, no, trust me. It's a different.
Yeah, I didn't want her to make her feel so bad. And next thing you know, she's like, the reason I'm out here on OnlyFans because my godfather never
OnlyFans. You know what? We about to
any money. He never gave me any money to survive. You're like, what?
He just always go to that darts. But you see how this kind of transition.
Hey, it gets that bad. I don't want. Hey, I'm afraid of OnlyFans.
I see.
I will say that when we say like when you do make these salary jumps and title increases, do celebrate, but like not into that like lavish extravagant, but just like reminisce in the moment that you made these achievements. And yeah, I don't think I went out to dinner when I got the job. I think I was like, I don't even know what I did. I think I just like stayed at home or something. Like I didn't even, it's just like, to me, it's
Trader Joe's wine. $7,
right? No,
like $7.99. Like you could be good.
I saw Avatar. I think when I saw Avatar, when I like actually
Avatar
like,
2. Somebody, you actually one of the people that saw it.
I did see the new Avatar. Yes,
yeah,
but
wow. I was just saying, like
seeing the movie Avatar was a very.
I've never met a person that saw it. Like I was like, the person that saw it.
Avatar. No, I like Avatar.
I'm not saying you don't like it. It's like it's making multiple billions, and you're like, I've yet to see people really seen it. Like.
Oh yeah, no, my kids love Avatar. So it's one thing about being a parent. I mean, it's like my celebration is their celebration. So we go and what do? We see a movie, which is much cheaper than going on a trip. So yeah.
So well, and then maybe it's a personal thing, but you don't have to answer it. Are they in their tweens yet, or they're in that stage?
No. So one will be 6. So that's why we're going to Disney for her 6th birthday. And then the other one is 8. She'll be 9 this year. So they're not tweens,
you're not at the tweens yet. The tweens is where it gets really interesting. That's when they give you the sass, the attitude. Hey,
I mean, mother. I still get that now.
They do hey, mother. Like,
no, I still get that. I feel like I get that now, but they're still they're if I go, excuse me, they're more like, oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. They're not the pushback yet.
Yeah, they're gonna get to that point. Hey, mother.
But I feel like they're with them at this age, though, it is like we go to Disney. It's like they want everything that comes with Disney.
The demand gets higher.
You gonna get that genie pass, like the genie pass, whatever passes they got.
I have a way around that. But,
okay. So you're gonna scratch again? Like you got? I got something to do with that. I can't really talk about it on social media.
No, I'll share it. No, actually, if you
hey, don't give out the secrets out here.
No, it's a good secret because trust me, I wish I would have known because I would have used it the last time I went to Disney because we just went to Disney in November. So if you have anybody in your party who has like any type of disabilities like ADHD, those kind of things, you get access to disability type passes. So you basically get in a queue with, you're not like in the genie queue, but you get in a queue where you get to come back at a certain time. And so you don't have to pay the genie pass price, but you still get to go at special times so you can skip the line. So yes. So because I have a child who has ADHD, we will be leveraging that this time.
Nice. People in Florida always be going to Disney though. They're like, yeah, we gotta go to Disney. So some people are like, what the heck? Like, yeah, I can always go to Disney. I went in November. I'm gonna go in summertime, and I'm gonna go back in November.
It's all about the kids.
Like, yeah, that's what you say to yourself. Like, you want to go back. The amount of walking you do at Disney, come on, like, y'all sick.
No, my daughter was like, can we go on a Disney cruise? I was like, oh, hold up now. Disney cruise. No. Well, when she went on a Disney cruise, like my kids, they've had people who did well in life, but they did, like, she has grandparents that worked for 30 years at a job and retired. And so they've been going on Disney cruises. And so their expectation of things is very high. And so I feel like I'm not going to keep up with their grandmother's expectations because she is retired. But
that's another great conversation to have about, like, really being a parent and understanding that, hey, their relationship with somebody else is going to be different. Your relationship with them can still be as magical and wonderful. You don't have to keep kind of keeping up with this other person coming out on the side, like that don't really spend like 90% of the time with them. Like, it just slides in, hey, here's a gift. And the person's like, walks away. Like, walks away as a winner.
Well, right, because I think it could be like, well, Holly, you're making all these salary increases, so you should, like, shouldn't you be taking your kids on Disney cruises and all these kind of things? I'm like, no, absolutely not. Now, can we get, we can do a little better than Chuck E. Cheese, and not that Chuck E. Cheese is a bad birthday, but we can't go to Disney, so we will go to Disney.
Is that still open?
But
I've been seeing some hood stuff at Chuck E. Cheese. I don't think I'm taking
Chuck E. Cheese is still open. I do take my kids to Chuck E.
Videos of some Chuck E. Cheese stuff. It doesn't look right. It doesn't look like it's not gentrified enough for me anymore.
Now that I think about it, with you having kids, and my siblings have kids.
It's not cheap too.
It's not a lot of spaces for kids, like specifically for kids. So now I think about it, like the kids, your daughters like to go to Disney. When I think about it, it's not a lot of places for kids.
We go to SeaWorld. SeaWorld's a little cheaper, but
SeaWorld, but outside of the theme parks, right? When you think about it, it's not a lot of places for kids. I mean, the beach.
Yeah,
the
Florida,
zoo.
DMV, we got like the free stuff out here, so we're good. Like for kids.
See, I was like, I could be like, skate station, like the skate place, but then it's like that skate place get dominated by adults. Like
exactly.
It's like all these places that were very like kid oriented, where the parents would just sit and watch the kids have fun. Now it's like
it's not like that anymore, right?
Yeah, now
you got to make this extra revenue. Extra revenue. For
I don't know. I got to pay like the parent pass, so I can go jump.
The adult trampoline, like the trampoline extreme zone, like extreme zone trampoline.
I gotta pay the parent pass so I can hop up in there.
Hey, and it's a lot of adults like me that didn't have a good childhood that's trying to relive it. It was like, extreme trampoline park zone sounds kind of nice.
No, and see, I understand that too, and so I think that's what I'm saying. Like, I went to Disney multiple times, but it wasn't until I was like older and my parents were making better money, and because my kids are actually starting from a place where both their parents make six figures at younger places in their life, I think they get afforded things that I just didn't get to at younger stages. Like,
does that make you feel salty?
No,
it's okay. It's okay. like the way you kind of pause there. No, it's like it's okay. You feel salty, huh?
Because my kids are funny, because my daughter's got these Disney princess dresses, and I tried to explain to them that, these are like $50 a pop for a Disney dress-up dress, and you're about to grow out of it in a year. And I tried to explain, because they're like, did you have one of these when you were a kid, Mom? And I was like, no, my parents couldn't afford these.
You went to a dark place when she asked you that question. You went to a dark place in your mind. Like, you was like, I wish when I was a kid. Like, flashback.
To put in perspective, like, you're very, like, trying to say you're very blessed, because I said, no, my parents couldn't afford to buy me one of these Disney princess dresses. And they're like, wow, that's sad.
It's like, don't care. So how about my Disney dress? Let's go.
But I also try to tell them, like, put it in perspective that because Mom is making all these moves and getting all this education and all these kind of things to make the money that I make, it does allow you to, live a better life and have more opportunities at a younger age that I just didn't get. Like, they have passports. Like, I didn't get a passport until I was in my 20s. And I was like a military kid, but that's a different type of passport. Like getting a passport now. Like my kids have passports. They just came back from Hawaii, and then my kids are like, "What did you do on vacation?" I worked. Like it's like understanding that
Saltiness. I'm feel so salty when I have kids. I'm like, they're gonna pop up. They're gonna be millionaires. I'm like looking at them like, I can. I'm gonna make your life hard to make you struggle for no reason at all.
I mean, but parents are self-sacrificing.
I hope you starve. Like he walks away.
But I guess that's the point. You self-sacrifice for your children so they can have a much easier life versus what you have.
Exactly.
My kids will be like, "Mom, can you order DoorDash?" Like when my kids I realized like my kids were like, I knew before that they were living a good life, but when they started coming up to me, can you go order that Chick-fil-A from DoorDash? And like thinking like, listen, we had to get in the car. If we were lucky, we were going like the 29-cent cheeseburger, 30, whatever it was like those little cheap days at McDonald's just to get back.
They don't have those no anymore.
I remember I worked at McDonald's when those cheap
the 29-cent cheeseburgers.
These people were savages. They were like coming in like a kid party and they need 200 hamburgers, half of them no pickles. Yes. Whoa. I used to get some serious orders like hey, 600
order.
Yeah, 500, 600. Like while the line was still going, queuing on both the inside, the outside, we'd also get calls for 200, 100, 600, or this one's like 50 with this, 60 with that. Yeah, it was crazy.
What?
It was
McDonald's did cater, like it's like a cater thing.
Because people used it. They're like realized, hey, parents are like, this is a cheap way for me to feed the entire
all the kids, yeah,
get all
like
the fries, get all that stuff. Like, they were killing it out there. I was like, man,
but we don't even have that anymore. We don't even have that anymore.
They don't have that option.
It's like, as a parent, why do I go to Chick-fil-A and my order is $35? Like, like as a parent, ooh. No, I'm serious. Like,
parent money is different. When you go outside, outside.
Oh, listen, it's like we got a budget to go outside. Like that's why I said it's like, yeah, I'll be getting them salary increases, but the expectation of
especially in Florida. I remember going out with my little cousins. It was like 5 of them. So I'm going out with them, chilling, go to Denny's or something, and the price is like at least a clean $100. And some of them don't even eat all the food. They're like, they want the food. They don't. That's
the bad part.
It's like, oh
yeah, don't even talk to me about not eating the food. Don't even
killing me. Then like, hey, well, I'm gonna get this thing to split. Oh, I don't want to share with her. I don't know.
Like, trust me, I actually told my kids after a while, like I said, I will not order you nothing from DoorDash or something. I said, I was like, you are banned from fast food or something. I said, because I was like, you don't eat all your food and you are wasting money. And I was like, there are kids in other places in this world, in America, even down the street, that would love this food that you are not eating and going to waste. And I was so I have to sometimes grapple with that. Like we were taught not to waste food growing up just because we didn't go out to eat like that, where my kids are like, they've been to all these restaurants and all this. And I'm sitting here like, I didn't go out to eat like this since I was in college or something. I didn't have these options. And so
they're going to live a very interesting life. And I think we do need to do a better job, maybe as people, to help them scale up slowly. Because, what else do you do after you've done all this stuff and you get to your primary years? You spend even more money. You got to spend more money. You got to level up. You can't just keep going to a Disney cruise. Now you got to go through a worldwide cruise. Then you can't go.
So are you saying the expectation for them is just going to get
psychological?
Higher?
It's I think they call it the hedonic treadmill. The more and more you give somebody, the more and more they kind of shift it to the next level. So if I gave my goddaughter, for example, I gave her a brand new car. Like, and it was like a Tesla. Whereas when she gets her next car, it has to be better than the last car. It can't be a downgrade from it. It doesn't make a lot of psychological sense. So it's just like keep scaling up. Whereas if you give her a regular car, if you give her like a car that's a little bit dusty and busted, whatever, a little old, eventually when she raises up her scale, it'll be a little bit more like incremental because there's no other place to go besides spending way more money than you don't have.
Yeah, it's like finding that balance where you don't want your kids to like struggle too much, but you also don't want them to just like have these high expectations that like when they turn 16, you're getting a brand new Volkswagen Jetta. You don't even make none of the payments, or where it's like, well, we're gonna buy this $2,500 Honda Civic. We gotta put a little work into it. It's like there's I mean, you see it nowadays, like because people are waiting to have their kids a little later and they're better financial place. It's like well, you get to go to Montessori right away versus we about to go to the hood babysitter
That's
for a few
very
years.
true.
And so,
That's very true.
Like it's a, and I get it because honestly, my kids will literally ask me like every birthday, it's like, can we go stay at a hotel and can we go somewhere? Like that's their expectation for birthdays is can we go somewhere and stay at a hotel?
Wow.
It's not even like,
different.
it's not even like, can we get a jump house in the back? That's like $150 to rent.
You gotta level up. In their minds, you leveled it up for them. So they gotta level up too. It's like a tier. They can't just say, I went back to Hawaii again. You know, again. Like,
well, that's for my oldest. That's her second time. And she had to be like, they had to like, can we go back?
Oh yeah,
to
you
Hawaii?
did go with her before
the
you had
time.
before you had the other one. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now they go back again. And so then they're going to the Disney cruise. This time before I think it was like the 4-day or 5-day. No, 4-day. And this time they're going for the 7-day to the Eastern Caribbean. Like it's like, and I tell them, I'm like, y'all are setting me up. Like I'm not taking them on a 7-day Eastern Caribbean Disney cruise. Like what? But again, that's retirement money.
Hey, just be happy that they're gone for 7 days. Or you're like, I'm free.
No, I know I'm happy they're gone.
Like,
but the expectation that sets for vacation moving forward is like, so are we going to that Nickelodeon one in Dominican Republic? I'm like, what? We saw it on YouTube.
They do. Like my godson said something like that too. He's like, hey, you want to go? I asked him, hey, where do you want to travel to? It's like, hey, I want to go to Japan. Like Japan, of all places. Like, where do you get this information from?
Go to Tokyo because they
saw the kid. Yeah, there's some kid that goes there.
Ryan.
I'm pretty sure it's the same one. Yeah, the same one, Ryan. I'm like, he's setting everybody up. Like his lifestyle is setting all of us up.
I was like, well, we need to find a way to get on one of these military planes or something like that.
Like, I don't mind. I'm like, I don't mind. But I'm like, how do you even know about Japan? Like, you know,
these kids like have these high expectations of like, because YouTube like also brings them like it socializes it that these are possibilities, which is good, but that's a possibility that you want to go see the world, but it costs money to go.
See, I don't mind seeing the world. I have this weird fear that when we get there, you're gonna be like, I want to go home. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on? Like,
I will say, Lawrence, like because my kids have been traveling since they were young, they love it. Like I feel like kids are young and they adapt. I feel like that's why
they'll adapt. But that first like couple of days or so is like it says, I wish I was home. I was like, but you wanted to be here. Like you messing me up. Like.
No, my kids would be like, they so excited. They'd be like, can we go explore? What is this place about?
They're at that level. They've been doing it for a while now. Yeah, they're seasoned.
Yeah, they're like, then I don't get no call. I had to like text like 2 days later. Y'all made it to Hawaii, right? Like y'all said,
I don't have this kind of time.
Oh yeah, they don't even. But mind you, they call me from their tablet, and they're like, hey, like, you okay? How's Florida going? We're in Hawaii.
Sounds like a struggle over there. Sounds like you're struggling. Like, look at your breathing pattern.
Right? Like, I'm good. So,
like, it doesn't seem like your skin is getting enough sun rays. Like, you might work on that. Like,
right? They came back like 2 shades darker. I'm like, they're like, Mom, what did you do on your spring break? It was 40 degrees, and I worked.
It was nice.
Yeah. So So it's. All of that to say is like, yeah, kids can be great motivators, but they also sometimes you might not be able to see that salary increase as much if you feed into all those expectations of bigger and better.
Yeah, absolutely. But I do want to thank you, Holly, for coming on, just sharing your story and just sharing, some great tips on how you kind of just did that pivot within the last 5 years that you mentioned, becoming the VP at your current employer. And I think it's so important to say, like, number one, really assess your skill sets and really give yourself, that time and that push of where you want to be within your company or just explore other companies as well. And number two, resume building. Like resume building is so key because you want to translate and have that language of what you can actually bring valuable to the company or your potential company that you are seeking out. And number three, you have to sell yourself. And learn to sell yourself at an interview, because if you do get to that point where an interview is offered, you have to advocate for yourself, not only what they're reading on your resume, but how can you actually translate that verbally and speak on your accomplishment, what things you can bring to the company. So that's very important, because you could do one thing on a resume, but come to find out you can't really speak on that language, right? So that's valuable as well. And the last thing I think I placed down is make sure that you're always documenting your accomplishments each quarter, every 3-4 months, document the things. If, your manager says something really, really well about something that you did, document that as well. At a meeting, I think is very important, so you can remember what you have done, but also bring it to the evaluation as well. That's something I actually been doing the last, I think, 2 or 3 years I've been doing. I think it makes such a great difference when it comes to your evaluation, especially mid-year evaluations, because you have the documentation. So once they finish talking and you get your chance to speak on your self-assessment, I have a presentation for you and share your screen and everything. And it tells your managers and it tells that people who are upper level that you're very serious about your position, and you can see yourself evolving in the position as well. So that's something I really encourage people to do, is document everything that you're doing, even things that you see that's not as a great strength. But they see that you are noticing that and identifying that and seeing what can you do to kind of get to, the career path that you want. Lawrence?
Yeah, there's just a lot to take away from the resume, from the branding, from the communication skills, and really diving into, being a better version of yourself. I think that's what we talk about on this podcast all the time. Like, it's not just like, I want to make money. It's like, I need to be a better version of myself. And that requires some time, some energy, some focus. And to your point, you can have kids, you cannot have kids, but it's going to be up to you to decide the trajectory of your life for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And this is like massive. And I remember you from like way back when on LinkedIn, you used to share like, hey, I do resume reviews, so on and so forth. And I'm pretty sure some people looked at you like, meh, I don't need that help. And they saw you still in the same position. This goes back to showing you too, make sure you double down on your friends. If they're doing these things and they're helping people and they're showing you progress and consistency like Holly has, like double down on her. I don't know if you still do like one-on-ones for resumes. I know this.
I do on a case-by-case basis, on a case-by-case.
Because, obviously, you big bank, it's like, hey, I don't.
And I will, honestly, everyone, if you're listening, I will say, and this is outside of our friendship, 2019, 2020, when Holly revamped my resume, we spoke about different positions and what I want to do. That pivot became $15,000-$20,000 salary increase with the new position. So Holly was that person to help me.
And the price is the price, people. Because sometimes y'all be acting like, oh, 500, 1,000 is a lot of money.
Right,
but price come to $20,000, $25,000.
Exactly.
$30,000.
That resume
pivot.
Like,
really life changing.
That resume builder.
I got other cases.
She has other cases as well.
And I'm pretty sure back in the day, she was charging maybe $50, $100. Now let's look at her like, I don't want to pay that.
It's so valuable. It's so valuable. Could you get that one-on-one attention? And we talk about career prospects and things in our careers, just regular conversation, but just to like hone down on the skill sets, because for me, I had to kind of transcribe my language of how previous experience can translate into what I was doing, what I want to accomplish. So I think when you have a person who's a little bit more expert into the career and HR background, can really help you with that. So I won't say just, go all in and pay $1,000. I'm not saying that, but it's people within your own circle or people that know someone else that can really help you. So really seek out that help, but definitely it helped me. It works.
Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to add there, because it's 100% important to really look and value the people around you doing the work and understanding what they're doing. So if anybody's listening and they want to become a DEI, I don't want to say DIY for some reason, but it's DEI, Chief Diversity Inclusion, or even in that space, it's important for you to even link up with her on the side. Like, I heard you on the podcast. You know what I'm saying? That's how you get to know people, and then you branch out a little bit and you follow her. You subscribe to what she's doing. So at least you're in the space. where you could change yourself and change the direction. Or if you know nothing, if this has nothing to do with you, you're an engineer and you're like, I don't care. But maybe you know a friend that is probably into that role as well. Or you know friends or cousins or nephews that need the resume help. This is what you do. You share the information that might not have 100%, it doesn't necessarily hit the nail for you, but it might hit the nail for somebody else. And that's how you built on these different stories. To recap on all the stories that Alanta wanted to cover with us this entire episode about stories on stories. And we're going to be talking about other stories.
You see? I come in circular.
Full circle. Is there any place that we can find you, Holly? Like, this is your moment to shine, where you can sell your stuff to the audience, not on OnlyFans, but to the other places. She's like, what?
Disclaimer: I do not have an OnlyFans.
Let's make that clear.
Hey, nobody has it. I don't have it
that we know of.
It's like, pause.
To say in the pandemic, it didn't cross my mind to see the kind of money that people were making. But no, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Holly A. Noon. Just type in Holly Noon. It's a pretty unique name, and everything that I've done on YouTube, Pinterest, Facebook pops up, Instagram. But still, through my Pinterest or LinkedIn and on my Instagram, you can still find old tidbits of tips around resumes and LinkedIn. And again, if you reach out to me, again, on a case-by-case basis, I still offer help. I still send out templates. So even if I'm not able to, but I say, hey, you have great content, I still give people free templates to modify their resume. So yes, hit me up, Holly Noon on LinkedIn, Instagram, all the platforms.
And you're also a nerd. So you're not just a professional, you're a blurred out here too. So you might want to, shout that out in the game.
Yeah. So, follow the New Blurred Order. I'm not on that one, but that's like half my podcast crew. I am on the Multiverse podcast for now, but I actually am ending that run next month. But again, I'll probably be on there here and there as a guest, but I'm on a.
But you're still a nerd though. You can still say, hey, I know about these things. I nerd out sometime. I watch Henry Cavill stuff because he's Henry Cavill. I've heard you before. I heard you guys talk about Henry Cavill.
Oh, The Witcher. Oh yeah,
so just for the richer, huh? Sure, like it's about his work ethic. Whatever.
If we want to talk about like in the blurred of spirit, into Marvel zombie stuff. I definitely love the Last of Us. But yeah, so like in the sci-fi horror superhero, Star Wars, love the Mandalorian. Just prove that you could be a professional and also still have a life. So you don't have to, you don't sacrifice yourself on the path of finding a better version of yourself. Facts. Yeah, facts.
With that being said, we're gonna be out. I never do the wrap up, so it's kind of weird for me.
I see. So with that being said, thank you again, Holly. Thank you, Holly, for tuning in. You can find me on IG at Alanta_Elson. Lawrence, he forgot how to wrap up.
Yeah, you can find me in the streets, the neighborhood finance guy, as always. So thank you for being part of this conversation. And if you have any other special guests that you want us to, chat it up with, or even if you need financial help and so on and so forth, send us a message. Write us a review, for God's sakes. Just write us a review. Subscribe, follow,
follow, all that good stuff. Thanks again for listening. Thanks again for listening, everyone. TFG, we're out.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Griot podcast, powered by the Wealth Builders Collective.